I'm incredibly pleased to moderate the section of this international scientific conference with such a huge representation of speakers from various countries. My name is Mikhail Fomin. I'm a Russian economist, PhD in economics, head of research, innovation and publishing department of the State Academic University for the Humanities. Our section is called Policy Process and Social Economic Structure in Russia. We are planning 4 reports. Each speaker has 7 or 8 minutes. Questions can be asked in chat or in video format after our reports. At the end of our section, speakers will be able to answer the questions asked. The first report on the program will be made by our colleagues from Bulgaria, from the Southwest University Neofit Rilsky, Nikolai Patonov, assistant professors, and Katerina Zhegova, assistant professors. Their report topic is stock markets of Russia, Germany, and Lebanon, efficiency and integration. Nikolai, please turn on your microphone and I give you the floor. So let's start our first report. Hello, Nikolai, are you here? Can you hear us? No, I don't see him, but where is he?
He's
Nikolai,
here, but he doesn't answer.
He doesn't answer. Okay, and maybe Katerina. Okay. Nikolai. Now I don't see him in our list of here in our Zoom.
Maybe they will join us later because I can see Nikolai, but I can't see Kate.
Okay. Nikolai, he turned on his microphone. I see this, but I don't hear any. Okay. I see you, Nikolai. Can you speak? Nikolai, do you hear us? Can you answer?
You can write in chat. You have any problems?
We have some problems with internet connection, but can we start with this first report? Nikolai, we do not hear you, so no sound.
No, still no.
Still no sound. Okay, what can we do now? We can go further to the second report while Nikolai will make something with his device, with his internet connection, because we have no sound, but we see you. We see you, Nikolai, but no, we do not hear you. So if you can come in to this chat, to this Zoom conference, maybe, or something like this, and you have several minutes till we will go to the next speaker. Okay, next speaker, Ožet Shigerbayev, Research and Consulting Department Director from joint stock company Trade. His report topic is Russian CA trade operation, current trends and possibilities. So, hello, Ožet, can you start with your presentation?
Yes, good day. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, let me try to make.
Sound is good. Okay. We see your screen.
Okay, good day, everyone. My name is Ožet Shigerbayev. Mikhail, thank you for giving me the floor. Electronic floor. Hope everything is going well. Yes, as Mikhail said, now I'm working in the Trade joint stock company. It's a quasi-state organization under the Ministry of Trade. But here I am as an independent researcher. My topic is the Russian Sea trade economic cooperation, current trends and possibilities. One moment. So, what is Central Asia? Central Asia, it's 5 countries, 5 post-Soviet countries, which includes Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. Before there was another notion like Kazakhstan and not Central Asia, Kazakhstan and Средняя Азия, Kazakhstan and Central Asia. Now the notions slightly changed. As we all know, in the 90s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was a distancing between all the post-Soviet countries, including Russia, Kazakhstan. Each country was which gets the independence. They were all free, and everyone was thinking only about themselves. Russia started its own pro-Western politics, and it was a trend for all the 90s. Everything changed in the beginning of 2000s when the United States started its operation in Afghanistan after 9/11, and with the coming to power, Mr. Vladimir Putin, when he became president. So the pro-Western policy showed its inefficiency, and Russian Federation, they started to think what we have to do. So we have to use all our influence on our nearest states, like post-Soviet states, the Balkans, Central Asia, Ukraine, Belarus, etc., etc., etc. What I will try to show in my presentation is what's the current trade cooperation between Russia and Central Asian countries, and what is the structure of this trade. Why the structure of trade is important? According to the Harvard approach, export of country shows its economic complexity. So if you trade with someone just using the raw materials, it means that you have very poor economy, and your economy is not good. Which data I used? I used the data from the International Trade Center, the site Trade Map, and some information was getting from the Rosstat.
Hello.
Okay. Okay, here we can see the share of all Central Asian countries in the Russian export. So we can see the Central Asian countries, their share in Russian total export around the world is miserable. While we have the different situation in the share of these countries in the Russian import. So Kazakhstan's 10% of all Kazakhstan's trade is belong to Russia. The same for Uzbekistan, the same for Kyrgyzstan, except for Tajikistan and Turkmenistan. Their main trade partners are China. Here we also can see on the right side the old trend of trade between Russia and Central Asia. The biggest one is Kazakhstan, because we have our raw materials, oil products, which actually says that it's not a raw material oil product, but processed goods. The second player is Uzbekistan, which main part in trade is actually agriculture. Okay, now let's move a little bit further. And here I use statistics from starting from 1995 to 2017 from Rosstat, 2018 2019. I used information from the ITC trademark. Okay, our next slide is, let us move a little bit deeper to each country. Here we can see the Russia-Kazakhstan relations. The main trend is that actually it's the trend for each Central Asian country, that import from the Central Asian countries is less than export to those countries. Mainly import from Kazakhstan to Russia is industrial, but as I already said, the oil products, they also shown, according to the WTO approach, they also shown as the industrial and processed goods. Mainly here we can see that industry, and here we have 50-50. Yes, you can see the raw materials and processed goods in the industrial. They're mainly the same. The another picture will be seen with other countries. All data, this data is for last 5 years, starting from 2015 to 2019. All this information gets from the trademark. It's import from Kazakhstan. The export to Kazakhstan, the 10% of all Kazakhstani trade. Is also, we can see that raw materials is not so good when Russia exports to Kazakhstan. While we can see that the processed goods, which actually is the real material goods, they are higher, very high level. Kazakhstan have very good ties with Russia. The biggest, the longest border all around the world. We are partners within the EU. As we all know, our first president, Nazarbayev, he was one of the first guys who said that we have to create such kind of organizations. And Kazakhstan has 3 trade representatives in the Russian Federation: Kazan, Samara, and Moscow, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I forgot something. This all institutions create a good basis for the further development of trade cooperation. Also, some different in between regional cooperation. We have the different forums, but we can see some risks. One of the main risks in Kazakhstani-Russian cooperation is the nationalistic rhetoric that we have to go out from the Eurasian Economic Union. It creates not goods for us, but a lot of risks. Our trade actually is not good. We mainly export raw materials and import the processed goods, and it's not good for our economy. This rhetoric creates some kind of risks. Next, moving to Kyrgyzstan. Here we can see that mainly the same situation as we saw with Kazakhstan, but the raw materials are less than the processed goods when the Kyrgyzstan exports to Russia. While when we see the export of Russia to Kyrgyzstan, it's mainly processed goods. Trends, as it already was said, that the export and import they are not equal. Institutions, Kyrgyzstan is a member of Eurasian Economic Union, with the nationalistic rhetoric again. But another risk is not between the Kyrgyzstan and Russia, but mainly between the Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, because we always have some kind of problems on our border when the cars and cargoes goes from Kyrgyzstan to the territory of Kazakhstan and or transiting through Kazakhstan to Russia. Another very important risk is actually the re-export. When the goods they came to Kyrgyzstan from China, Kyrgyz is saying that it's actually the Kyrgyz goods, changing a little bit these products, and re-exporting, saying that it's actually export to the territory of Eurasian Economic Union. Moving further, the weakest one, and you can see the trend of trade for the last 5 years, is not monolithic, it's chaotic. It's Tajikistan. Why so? Because Tajikistan's economy is not good. Not actually good, it's not strong. As I said in the beginning, according to the Garvard approach, your export shows the complexity of your economy. And here, as we can see, the complexity of Tajikistan's economy is actually weak. Except that there is a weak institutional cooperation between Tajikistan and Russia. It was a little bit different before Russia took its forces from Tajikistan. And it actually leads us to some risk, the Afghanistan's issue. As we all know, after ISIS defeat, some of the members they found the new place in Afghanistan and create some kind of problems. Moving further, Turkmenistan, mainly, yes, here we can see that import from Turkmenistan is actually industrial and processed goods. As I already said, it's mainly oil production and gas production, as you can see. And the main risk, not the risk, but some kind of border took the cooperation with the policy of neutrality, which was undertaken by Turkmenistan since getting Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Uzbekistan, here we can see the export-import is monolithic, so it's not chaotic, it's quite good. And the very important point here is that Uzbekistan became an observer within the EU. The further cooperation, strength of cooperation will create good possibilities not only for Uzbekistan, but for other Central Asian countries such as Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, because Uzbekistan is one of the leaders in Central Asia, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And main conclusion, specialization of each country is not monolithic, so we export what Central Asian countries export to Russia is actually wheat production, and import from Russia to Central Asia, it's proceed goods. It leads to the next point that we have to diversify. If we want to create strong economies, we have to diversify our export. How? Only by strengthening our own industry. Chinese factor is a very big not threat, but it creates some kind of occasions for Russia, because when Russia thinks that Central Asia is the euro and de facto in the geopolitical sphere of influence of Russia, while Chinese, what they said in 2013, Xi Jinping said, okay, we'll make Belt and Road Initiative. They said it once, and since those time, they are step by step creating, realizing infrastructural investment projects. I'm not talking about oil and gas, but they're creating roads, building transit routes, creating new factories, manufacturers. And last week, as you all know, they started the new transit way from China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and further to the Middle East. And nationalistic rhetoric in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, it says that Russia have to think about its image in the Central Asian countries to change it. So, thank you for your.
Thank you very much, Ojet, for the review of international economic relations between Russia and Central Asia countries. You have a bit more time than we have, but let's go further. And I think that now our colleague Nikolai Patonov can speak about his topic, about their report topic, stock markets of Russia, Germany, and Lebanon. Nikolai, are you here? Can you now start with your report? Hello, Nikolai. You were here. You say something a bit several minutes ago, but now we have new problems. Okay, Nikolai, I hear you. Can you start? Can you start? Can you start without video? Maybe the problem is in internet, so you can speak, but without video. Now there is no sound. Oh, okay. Nikolai, say something. Oh. So there are some problems in this distant format. Nikolai, can you speak? No sound. No sound. Very bad, maybe internet connection or something, problems on Zoom. So we can go further, I think. You can try some else sound. But now we can go to the third report. Our third report is made by Laurent Hubert, from our colleague from Belgium, coordinator the Shifters Brussels. His topic is why do we struggle to tackle climate change and how might Russia be affected by this? So, Laurent, can you start your presentation?
I hope so.
Oh, you are okay. We hear you. So there are no.
I would just need to be able to share my screen. That's
I
not
think
the case?
yes.
Yes, please, Nikolai, can you stop sharing the screen so the third reporter could do this, and we will come back to you later. Okay? You're sharing the screen. Please stop it. Give opportunity to our other participant.
Otherwise, I think you can do it yourself if he doesn't manage.
Alisa,
Yeah.
I think that you can do it. Demonstration and stop it. Alisa, can you do it? Okay,
yeah.
Very good.
Perfect.
So we can go to Lauren.
Exactly. There you go. All good? You see my presentation?
Yes, we see it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's get started. Why do we struggle to address global warming and climate change and potential consequences for Russia? We will talk about three things. First will be climate, second will be about energy, and the third will be about the challenges ahead. In 8 minutes, it's going to be short, but I hope to keep your full attention for these 8 minutes. Let's get it started. So how do we get to this point where we are actually destroying the planet by our activity? Before answering that question, I think it's important to re-emphasize the way climate is working, especially in Russia, where there is a straight conflict between politics and science, and where the human origin of today's global warming is still, I would say, denied in a sense. So just to make it clear, greenhouse effect, which is how the planet keeps warm and make it inhabitable, is something that is important. If I look at this little picture, what you see in blue is the atmosphere, and the atmosphere naturally contains greenhouse gases, CO2, methane, steam, and so on. This is important because this lets the sun light through, and the Earth absorbs this light and emits a radiation which is infrared, and this infrared radiation is blocked partly by the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So look at the atmosphere and at this greenhouse, the atmosphere as a blanket, and the greenhouse gases as feathers in the blanket. The more feathers you're going to put in your blanket, the more you're going to keep the warmth. And this is what is actually happening by the quantity of emissions of CO2 and other gases we are emitting. On top of that, we have positive feedback loops. For the positive feedback loops are self-activating effects, if you want, of global warming. Let's say that my atmosphere is becoming hotter and the ice starts to melt. The less ice I have, the less sunlight is reflected, because icy surfaces are more reflective than any other. So this brings more heat. The Earth absorbs more heat, which makes the atmosphere hotter, and this is a positive feedback loop. But these feedback loops, they concern pretty much anything, be it the oceans, be it the forest fires that we have been seeing, be it the ice, and being the biodiversity, even forests and so on. This is one first aspect that we need to keep in mind. The second thing is, can we choose between climate and energy? Or is it one or the other? This is the evolution of our use of primary energy in terawatts per hour. What we see is that from the start of the Industrial Revolution till today, this increase has been massive, and it has been extremely important to all of us, because we have all benefited from it. Now, we believe that we are extremely smart as a species, which is true. We have made some amazing things. But what we see now, which is two pictures of Moscow, separated by only 150 years, that has only been possible because of the amount of energy we have been able to use. Because energy, in a sense, is the ability to change the world, to change the physical world around us. And today we're using energy for everything. That is to say that we need petrol, coal, gas, nuclear energy, whatever, you name it. Today, whatever we are wearing, consuming, requires a lot of energy. The first one being probably transportation, which is the essence of globalization. Without energy, globalization cannot work from a physical perspective. And to better understand the importance of it, one way is to look at England's data, because England has data for a very long time. And we can clearly see that from the Industrial Revolution, we have benefited from an increase in the GDP per capita that has been absolutely massive. And today, we are pretty clear about it. And we're pretty clear about the fact that the more energy we are going to consume, the higher the GDP is going to be. So there is a straight correlation, a straight line between energy consumption and the ability to make money. And that is very important because our whole system is based on this flux. The problem is that as much as we love energy, it has a downside, is that it emits CO2, a lot of it. And there is a straight correlation between the two as well. There has been some talks about climate change for some time now. I mean, the IPCC, which is the international body looking at climate change, exists since 1990. But so far we have seen no slowing down of our emissions, and this despite the Paris Agreement and Russia signing this agreement last September, which is a bit of a problem, let's put it like that. Today in the world, if we look per inhabitant, Russia is actually the second highest emitter per inhabitant of CO2 emissions. This is basically due to the fact that you have huge resources of gas and petrol, and that a huge fraction of your economy is based on this, as well as its ability to use it for any purposes, since it's subsidized in a sense. The problem is that since we have seen that there is a link between climate and energy use, we see here the evolution of climate through the years since the 19th century. And what we see is that it's becoming warmer and warmer compared to its pre-industrial standards. Today we're at plus 1.2 degrees. And although this seems marginal, plus 1 degree, what does it mean in the end? It has already huge impacts on the world around us. And why it matters is, of course, because these changes are, for most of them, negative. What we see here is a table of some of the consequences. On the one hand, on the impacts on the Earth, and this will then relate to the human society. So from the Earth's perspective, we have a rise in temperature and heat waves. We have a water cycle that is disrupted, an increase in the frequency and strength of extreme events. Oh, that was forgotten to be translated. Anyway, it's an increase in the levels of a rise in waters. so decrease the beaches are being swallowed. Belgium, in this sense, might be one of the first countries to lose part of its coast due to it. Oceans become more acid, which means less fish, amongst others, and there is a breakdown in ecosystems in general. Now, if we look around, we have a few examples of it just this year. You might have heard that Russia is facing some extreme heat waves in Siberia, especially with temperatures 10 to 15 degrees higher than they should be at this point of the year, which has already launched huge wildfires, which is always a problem in Siberia, but getting worse. On the other hand, this could lead to water shortages, devastation, drops in fishing yields, in crop yields, climatic migration, and political and financial instabilities. This on top is totally interconnected, one leading to the other. And I would like to finish by this, is that I know that although the Russian government is not very keen to accept or admit the fact that global warming is due to human activity, it has started to analyze the bottlenecks and try to prepare strategies in order to sustain its activities in this huge change. However, it will not be able to manage all factors, all externalities, as well as there is still too much uncertainty as to how an increase in 2 or 3 or even 4 degrees as we go today will impact its very way of existing. Not only to say that Russia lives in a globalized world where every country needs the others in order to export. And this is the major challenge that we are facing, not as a nation, but as a humanity for the time being. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Loren. I think here in Russia we also understand the complexity of the climate problem. So it's very important topic of research. So thank you very much for this information, for your presentation. And now let's go to the fourth report by our program. From Russia, Alexander Bugrovsky from National Research University Higher School of Economics, I think from Moscow, with the topic, the impact of civic organizations of people with disabilities as factor of institutional inertia in Russian social policy. So, Alexander, are you here? Can you start your presentation?
Yes, hello dear participants. So let me start my presentation. So can you hear it and can you see it? Yeah? Okay.
We see it and we hear you.
Okay, thank you. So let me clarify, I'm from St. Petersburg campus of Higher School of Economics, but it's not such important information for us. I will present yours. My PhD project. I'm investigating social sphere. So today I'm going to present you a little bit theoretical things about stabilization and development regarding social sphere, especially in the third sector of social, in the Russian third sector. So the topic is impact of civic organizations of people with disability as factor of institutional inertia in Russian social policy. So firstly, I will try to make attention to that there is a lot of cases where political structure and state machineries of different countries face pressures from communities of people united by certain interests. Modern Russian social policy is framed by innovation as well as paternalistic practices in the certain authoritarian modernization context. I suppose that inside of that context, there is an institutional inertia that's feature supporting conservative practices in the social protection of people with disabilities. NGOs in different legal forms working with people with disabilities might be considered as the interest groups. There is a scientist who already argue about the impact on policy income among certain NGOs in Russia that are involved in cooperation with the government structures and considered from the perspective of brokers that seeking public goods and offering electoral support to the state, and initiators promoting certain reforms in the social sphere. So researchers point different access to resources depending on the activities of organizations. So more priority is given to the social-oriented NGOs and government organized NGOs. And striking example of such non-governmental organizations are three organizations that are in my focus. It's called All Russian Public Associations of Disabled, All Russian Public Association of Deaf, and All Russian Public Association of Blind. They are constructed from 1990s and make influential positions in the Soviet time, representing their interest of certain categories of people with disabilities. Nevertheless, the existence of institutional inertia in Russian social policy and the impact of such NGOs is not clear and curious for my investigation. So I suppose there is a question whether the activities of all Russian societies of disabled, blind, and deaf in the role of interest groups influencing towards institutional inertia, and if they provide such influence, how they do it. So in the global perspective, the interest groups in Russia, especially that may influence on the implementation of social policy, are less studied. The researchers considered Russian public organizations of the Soviet type as a driving bells which are under state control and provide certain functions. The processes of preservation of interest groups benefits by influencing legislative initiatives also important for choosing this case, and increase of pressure between non-governmental organizations organized from the grass initiatives of people and certain categories of organizations as Gongo. So here there is the symbols of three organizations that I investigated. They all of organizations used subsidies. Excuse me. All of organizations use subsidies from the state. They provide different access to benefits depending on the belonging certain NGO. They have close ties between leaders of civic associations and state officials, and they are established in the Soviet time. My theoretical framework is constructed from 4 theories. Mainly it's historical institutionalism theory and path dependence. And additional theories is theory of interest groups and theory of values. I suppose to argue that the interest groups influence towards institutional inertia, and the difference in values in the Russian social sphere also provides such effect towards institutional inertia. So I did a literature review on institutional inertia, concepts influencing on it. I collect open information about key interest groups. Then I did content analysis of Russian welfare legislation, documents of all Russian societies of disabled, blind, and deaf, and provide comparative case studies with the 3 organizations and 2 cases, Moscow and St. Petersburg. So I provide a series of in-depth interviews with local chairs of all Russian societies of disabled, blind, and deaf, and civil society experts. And in the future, I suppose to do it in the federal level. And then I did qualitative analysis of interviews and try to understand what is the institutional inertia in social sphere and what are the factors. So during the literature review, I suppose that I choose 3 terms that are important for my understanding of institutional inertia. It's institutional persistence, institutional reproduction, and institutional continuity. Here there is a description of these terms. I used mainly persistence and continuity for the further steps. So the literature review gives me the certain understanding what is the inertia. So it's defined as a feature that leads to the long-term persistence of institutional structures, continuity of their key norms and rules, and attempts to continuously ignore or correct changes and innovations. In the context of social policy, I present such term as a feature that persisting processes, norms, rules, and social policy, and continuing the historically established existing system of social protection of people with disability. So here I suppose that path dependence is the additional construct to my theories. So institutional inertia is worked in the framework of the path dependence theory. The main factors that I investigated now is a difference in values and political conflicts. So there are additional specific factors such as sunk costs, preference for endogeneity, existence of informal restrictions, and subordination of power. That will be verified further. So mainly I will tell you about difference in values and political conflict. So and the next step, I suppose that I need to explain why I assume that all Russian societies of disabled, blind, and deaf might be represented as interest groups. So they use variety of typical interest groups practices. For example, provision of information for authorities about the problems in their field. So here the examples: development of appropriate legislation and promotion to legislators. So since the ratification of convention on the right of persons with disability, such organizations provide a lot of efforts to change federal and regional laws regarding the convention. So they also do expert review of various projects developed by authorities. They provide comments, certain amendments and remarks, but not all of them are accepted by the state structures. Also, they organize congresses and conferences with the invitation of the first person to provide attention to the certain problems and participate in the work of government structures. For example, parliamentary hearings in Russia. Here there is examples. There are examples. So to produce such idea, I suppose to operationalize my theoretical things regarding institutional inertia. So I did content analysis and sorry. I did content analysis regarding my field. So I analyzed the practices of organizations. So you can see it: WOI, WOS, and the WOG. It's the shortages of the whole names of the organizations. So such work provide me 2 indicators of inertia: its durability and continuity. So data presented, data used for this work is grounded by reports and materials from the websites of 3 organizations from 2006 till 2020. So here I suppose what I think about the data. So there is some problems that are not unified in certain organizations. So they all provides different structures of reporting. The main thing that's interesting to know that they are not provide reports at all until 2006 because there is no obligations in the Russian legislation. After there is some legislative acts that provide necessity to produce such reports, and they provide certain information. So during the content analysis, I realized that there is the 4 main forms of interaction with the state authorities between VOI, WOS, and VOP, and Russian federal and regional authorities. It's advisory, informational, financial, and property support. So you can see that firstly, they are mainly oriented on the vertical line, so from the state towards organizations. So the indicators of durability and continuity were traced for their presence in the mentioned forms of each society from 2006 to 2020. In the question of financial support, it was analyzed from 1996 to 2020. So here there is the practices that I called from reports and certain information from the mass media. You can see there are as durability as well as continuity in the informational support. Mainly organizations provide certain conferences and events where they try to inform authorities about their problems and try to ask another ways for support. So for the advisory support, they provide certain amendments, comments, and certain critics towards Russian legislation in the social sphere. So I would say that such form of support is biased, so it's possible to check how they work with the state authorities, but it's really hard to understand how they provide certain decisions in the under the certain close connection. So I can see here, and I can't see any things even in interviews how they do it, but they, in conclusion, they provide certain initiatives, but state authorities actually accepted more or less 30% of their initiatives. So for property support, the practices of property support are identified for 3 organizations together because they are locked in the Russian legislation. So the state provides state-owned property free of charge for them. They have preferential conditions for the payment of housing and communal services. They provide benefits for the rental of state property. They provide property for temporary social, cultural, educational, rehabilitational measures and services. That's for free for each organization, and even for the big congresses and big expo centers. And also they transfer, there are some cases about Crimea subdivisions of such organizations. They transfer the buildings and structures of Crimea societies of disabled, blind, and deaf towards the all Russian associations for free, and even without any debts or certain conditions. So
can you make some conclusions? So you have 1 minute, not more.
Thanks.
We have to make some questions.
Okay, so the last things that I want to mention is financial support. You can see so all of organizations have financial support from 1996 towards 2020. I need to mention that there is the additional 4 organization disabled of war that are not financed in 2019 and 2020 because they was closed by the Ministry of Justice because of corruption. So during the, excuse me, so I guess I have some problems with the presentation. So to conclude, I want to mention that I provide forum for interaction between state authorities and such organizations, and in the whole 4 forums I traced 2 indicators that are supposed that the informational, consulting, financial and property support are producing certain indicators for inertia, and that's supposed to argue that there is an institutional inertia between state authorities and all Russian societies of blind and deaf and disabled in the social sphere. So thank you for your attention. I guess if there is some misunderstanding, I can do some comments. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. You had a lot of information. So thank you for your presentation. And now we have some time for several questions for each speaker. So Nikolai cannot come to our presentation, cannot speak like lecturer. So we have only 3 reports now in our section. And now I have some questions for our first speaker, for Ozhet. Ozhet, what do you think are the prospects for the development of economic cooperation between Russia and the countries of Central Asia? So can you answer this type of question, like prospects for our cooperation economic? Ozhet, are you here with us?
Yeah. Thank you, Mikhail, for question.
Thank you.
First of all, it depends on Uzbekistan and its accession to the EU. Because Uzbekistan was one of the leaders in Central Asia, its participation in the EU will affect Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan and maybe even Turkmenistan. Regarding Turkmenistan, as we all know, they're quite close country, but as we also know, now they face some economical problems. For instance, 2 years ago, when the economic problems just began, President Muhamedov, he made several trips to Kazakhstan, Russia, European countries, looking for investments. Unfortunately, he didn't find it, and now they face quite strong economic problems. So I think that they will change their policy in 2 or 5 years, I think so. Their participation in the Council of the Heads of Central Asian Countries, which actually started in 2017, first of all, they said, okay, we will not participate. Then, when this meeting of this council was either in Tashkent or in Astana, I don't remember exactly, they sent the head of Senate. So Turkmenistan, they're changing. If we talk about Tajikistan, if you will remember, before Armenia accessed to the EU, there were talks that Tajikistan will access to the EU. Something changed, but I think that COVID-19 showed to us that it's good to be separate from everyone else, but if you do not have good, strong economic ties with your partners, it's not good for you.
So thank you. So we will see some good changes, I think, yes? Okay, and I have one question for Loren. Loren, are you here with us? What should social science researchers do to cope with climate risks? So you speak a lot about the presence of these climate risks, and what do we should do as social researchers, as economists, as political science researchers? What do you think about it?
I think it's very important to first of all understand the magnitude of the issue and the kind of impact it is going to have. So to educate ourselves and the people around us is the first thing, because if we do not understand the scope of the problem, we are not going to be able to address it. I will give you a simple example. If you believe that we are going to meet the idea of the Paris Agreement of staying under 1.5 degrees increase in temperature, you are not going to prepare for more than that because you believe it's still doable. The fact is, it is not, because the way we are continuing, we cannot stop our economy from functioning from tomorrow, because we say, okay, we cannot produce CO2 anymore, so we're done with it. So understanding this aspect is crucial. Another aspect that we try to put forward a lot is that if we're serious about climate change, we are not going to find technological solutions, because there is no way that you can produce the amount of energy produced by gas and petrol in another way. Nuclear energy is nice because it's decarbonated, and Russia is at the forefront for that, which is great, and it should keep moving towards that. But that's only 20% of your energetic mix, electricity. So if you want to expand that, you still can't match the power of gas and oil together. So we need to review our whole system in order to be able to address this issue, which means the way we build, the way we transport, the way we produce. In that sense, COVID has been interesting because, for instance, in Europe, it has shown us that how dependent we are towards China for a lot of the production. And so we have said, maybe it's time to rethink the way we want to do that. And Russia needs to find its own way, of course, in that sense. And that's where I think also there is a big difference between what is said from the scientific side, because Russia is part of the IPCC, so and you have amazing scientists. So I'm sure that you guys have the knowledge to deal with it. But if it's not heard because there is economical interests in climate change, it will necessarily lead to drama. And I will finish with this last example. Is climate change is usually shown into a negative way because it will affect billions in a negative way. But for some countries, and Russia is one of them, it has also a huge potential. It will open the Arctic Sea to ships. It can increase the amount of land that could be used for crops. And generally speaking, it could also enable more gas and oil pumping due to new regions in the Arctic being available. But to bet on this, on the positive sides, it's a very, very, very risky business. And we have seen with the recent challenge you have had with this, was it the oil production in Siberia, where one of the containers collapsed and polluted the whole river? Well, this is due partly, as far as I understood, due to the permafrost melting. So you will have a lot of installations being ruined like that potentially in the next 10 years. So that's the difficulty.
That's the answer. Thank you very much, Loren. It's very interesting. You're
very welcome.
Okay, and the last question for our third speaker today, for Alexander. Alexander, what are the as you think, what are the prospects for the development of the third sector in Russia? So you speak about it, about our third sector. So what are the prospects for it? I don't hear you.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you for your question, Mikhail. So I will say that the perspectives for the third sector in Russia I suppose there is the perspectives in digital initiatives, because the COVID-19 has shown that the certain organizations might work with the external pressure from the different changes and economic crashes and etc. So, but for the perspectives, especially in Russia, in Russian first sector, we need to propose legislation that might be equal each for the certain conservative structures, as I investigated, as well as for the grassroots initiatives that are proposed help or provide certain needs for the different kinds of people, for the small communities of people. And COVID-19 so has revealed such problem, so it may be helpful for the development of new initiatives, I would say.
Thank you, Alexander. Greetings to St. Petersburg, and sorry for my. So, thank you very much for all the speakers for the excellent presentations, and to the listeners for your attention. We are completing our section and conference. I look forward to continue such a wonderful practice of international scientific conference, especially dedicated to Russian studies as our conference. So thank you very much for all. And now I think we can finish. Yes, Alisa?
Yes, thank you everyone for participation. We will send you information about how to prepare your articles during the week, and also with certificates about the participation. I hope you enjoyed this event, and have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.